welcome to Life Expressions. I'm your host, Shari Hinete Elon. Today we'll talk about cultivating a positive workplace culture. But before I continue, please don't forget to follow Life Expressions and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Of course, you could listen to Life Expressions on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. My guest today is such an inspiring woman, Natasha Purnell. Natasha is Park Insurance's Chief Culture Officer. She's a seasoned professional with over 20 years of entrepreneurial leadership and management experience. Armed with a CAIB designation and management certificates from BCIT in marketing management and professional sales, she has meticulously crafted strategies for nurturing a positive workplace culture. Natasha's goal is to ensure her employees are happy every day. She is tasked with ensuring that every decision Park makes aligns with their core values of passion, innovation, teamwork, and happiness. Natasha's contributions have not only helped Park Insurance earn distinctions like the Healthy Workplace Award and the Small Business of the Year Award, but also earned her the prestigious 2023 Business Person of the Year accolade from the Burnaby Business Excellence Awards and the 2024 Insurance Business Magazine Elite Women list. Natasha was recently selected as the launch keynote speaker for the Insurance Institute of BC's annual symposium. During this event, she delivered an engaging hour-long presentation unveiling her secret sauce for cultivating a positive workplace culture. I'm so glad to have here on Life Expressions Natasha Purnell. Welcome back,
Oh,
Natasha.
thank you so much for having me again. What a pleasure to get to spend some time with you today talking. Thank you so much.
It is my honor and pleasure to have you here. I am excited. What is the secret sauce? Let's talk about that.
I love it. Yeah, absolutely. It was something that sort of stemmed in the middle of the pandemic. I had been spending over, as you mentioned, 20 plus years in leadership, management, and entrepreneurship, really honing my skills and my craft and my trade around building a positive workplace culture. And obviously, during the pandemic, we all had a lot of extra time on our hands. And so, really took the time to document what that looks like and how you can cultivate it in almost any workplace. And so there's 6 ingredients to my secret sauce. And just much like making a cake, if you
Yeah.
don't have all the right ingredients in place and the right amount of each one, then your cake is not going to rise and it's going to turn out quite poorly. Yeah, and so the 6 ingredients I always find are the employee engagement, and particularly around employee engagement surveys and how to conduct those and how to take that data and turn it into transformable changes that actually have impact and value for your organization. Communication, huge important ingredient, recognition, development, some human resources best practices, and then all the fun stuff.
Yeah, all the fun stuff. I like that. But
Yes.
first, let's get into the employee engagement survey. What
Mhm.
are the questions that you need to ask in the survey, and how often should you conduct it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I always say that your questions could be custom, right? Where you craft them around the values of your company, your organization, and really what your goals and your purpose is for doing the employment engagement surveys. Another really great trick that you can do is there are a company called Gallup, and it's scientifically proven that they have these 12 questions that if you ask these 12 questions and work towards making organizational changes within your company based on the feedback from them, you will see higher engagement and productivity from your employees. So, some example of some of the questions are, I know what is expected of me at work,
Mm,
right? So people need to feel like they know what is expected of them at work in order to show up and be the best versions of themselves.
yeah,
Another question is, I have the tools and equipment I need to perform my job right. That's very important, right?
yeah,
For people to be able to show up and know that they have all the right tools and equipment that they need. Sometimes leaders, we make decisions about a company based on what we think our employees want or what they need, but we don't actually really know, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we've given them this pen that we think is the world's best pen, but they're utilizing it because they're the boots on the ground, and they're like, hey, this pen really sucks, right? And so, that's feedback that you can take, right?
Yes.
Some of the other questions are around, I've been recognized in the past 7 days. I have a best friend at work. I have the opportunity to grow and develop my career. So just a lot of questions around that engagement, that satisfaction, and that productivity. Employees these days, they want and need so much more from their employment other than proper compensation and salary, right? And
Yeah.
so that engagement is really digging down into what your employees are telling you as a leader in your organization that they want and need to show up to perform their best, to take care of your clients, to
Mhm.
increase your productivity and your revenue, and to be the best versions of themselves.
Yeah. Does this entail more budget, like the employee engagement survey, or should they hire a professional to do this, or could they do this on their own?
To be honest, anyone could do this. It is that easy, right? I mean, as I said, crafting some custom questions would obviously just take you a little bit of time to,
Yeah.
sit down and identify what your purpose is for the survey, what you want the outcome to be, and think about some questions. When we started doing surveys, we had 33 questions on our survey.
Mhm.
Now we've moved over because we have a 92% satisfaction rate and we've resolved the majority of our issues. And so we do the Gallup survey, right?
Yeah.
And so you could easily just Google Gallup,
Yeah.
Gallup, and get those 12 questions. You could put it on
Okay.
SurveyMonkey, Microsoft Forms, any sort of, platform where you can make sure that the survey is anonymous, because you need to make sure that the staff feel that they can provide to you the information that they're really thinking and feeling in an anonymous nature, and then send it out. It costs literally, I mean, if you use SurveyMonkey, it might cost you $30 for the month, right? So
Yeah.
it's very economical to get
Yeah.
started with this.
And very helpful to really get the feedback that you need
Yes.
from your employees, because
Yeah.
you wouldn't know what works and what is not working for them until they actually tell you.
Exactly. And the reality is that as a business, as a leader, as an executive, you're going to be making changes within your business. So
Mhm.
why not make sure that they're valuable changes based on what your employees want and need, right?
Yeah.
I really stand by, the Sir Richard Branson quote that says, "Do not take care of clients, take care of your employees. If you take care of your employees, they will in turn take care of your clients." So it's really just like changing that mindset and shifting it to, I'm going to take care of the employees, right? And have buy-in to taking care of them on a professional and personal level. And if I do that, they're going to want to take care of me on a professional and personal level, which includes taking care of those clients and making sure that your business is profitable and productive.
Yeah, I agree with that. How
Hmm.
about communication? The second ingredient. What are the do's
Yes.
and don'ts in communication?
Yeah, I mean, communication is such an important ingredient. It is, the lifeline of any relationship you have, whether that's professional or personal, right? So, if you want to increase employee engagement, which is employee engagement, the definition is the relationship between the employee and the organization, right? So, if
Yes.
you think about communication as being that, cornerstone to any effective relationship, then you need to be a rock star at communicating if you want to build employee engagement. So I would say that, a few of my tips for effective communication is, my number one rule is that if you feel like you're over communicating, you're probably communicating just enough. So, and you and I were talking before, right?
Yeah.
That people need to hear something 7 times before they hear it for the first time, right? So, as a leader, thinking about, am I sending too much communication? Am I telling them too much? Am I being too transparent, right? All of that. If you feel like you're at that where you're over communicating, you're probably communicating just enough. The staff need and want to hear as much communication as you can possibly give them. And a lot of that comes from change management, right?
Yeah.
As humans, it goes back to our caveman days. We don't like
Yeah.
change. Change means death, right?
Yeah.
And so when we're
Mm.
scared of death, right, then we fight or we flight, right? And so people don't like change. So they don't like to be surprised. They don't like to have come in on a Monday morning and all of a sudden they have a new software program that they're supposed to be using, or something has changed, or they have a new workflow or a new process, anything new or anything changing, you need to make sure that you're communicating, right? And just, I always find that being transparent is a huge one. Another one of my do's is to be clear, right? Clear is kind and unclear is unkind, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like, when we communicate with people, we're not necessarily clear in our message and our delivering and what we're actually trying to say because we're worried about hurting, people's feelings, right? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be mindful and empathetic about people's feelings and how messages are perceived and interpreted, right? But and I'm sure you've seen situations before, right, where it's this roundabout conversation, to get to the point of it, right, instead of just being clear, right? So
Yeah.
clear is fine.
But it's
Yeah.
also a matter of how you say it. Sometimes it's not just what you say, but it's
Yes.
also how you say it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, there's the 5 styles of communication, which we could talk for this whole entire 45 minutes to an hour on just communication alone. In my boot camp, we talk about communication for 2 hours. So it's a
Yeah.
heavy topic to talk about. There's a lot
Yes.
to learn, right? But you're right about how you're delivering it, the body language that you're using, if you're actively listening, if you're seeking to understand, right? And you're, asking questions, saying, I heard you say this. Is this correct? Right? Or
Yeah.
even how you're delivering the message. I do a blind drawing exercise, which I did live on stage during my lunch keynote, where I give participants a picture. They have
Yeah.
to sit back to back, and one of them has to describe to the artist how to draw the picture without telling them what the picture is or any objects. They can only just sort of describe what they say, and the artist can't ask any questions, right? And it really demonstrates how communication is only very effective when we have two-way
Correct.
communication, right?
Yeah.
And that it really, communication is about creating strategies to understand one another. And it's usually quite funny because when I do this exercise, I've done it as team building and live that keynote, the picture is just a house, but
Yeah.
normally the picture never ends up being drawn like a house.
Yeah, because they cannot say the word house too.
They cannot say the word house, right? So
Yes.
what, even to start, what happens is the speaker will say, okay, draw a square, right? So they draw a square, but you're like, I don't know where to draw the square. So they draw this big square in the middle
Yeah.
of the page. And then they say, draw a triangle on top, but there's no room to draw a triangle on top, right? So
Yeah.
even the second step in the communication process has already been broken because your communication was not clear, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so asking questions
Mm,
is also very important because if you
very.
don't get to ask questions, if you're afraid to ask questions because it might be taken against you, then the problem starts as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I think even just, when you ask questions, right, is, having a leading statement, right? Are you okay? Can I ask questions? I want to seek to understand what you said. I want to clarify that this is what you said, right? Or can I ask for some follow-up questions? I didn't quite understand this,
Mhm.
right? Sometimes how you understand something will be different than how I understand something,
Yeah.
right? And that's also the important part of like the two-way communication, right? Is being able to say, I'm not understanding what you're saying right now, right? Could you try explaining it to me maybe in a different way,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah.
What about in a management or a management style that will only give you the information that you need to know? Like there are companies that would say, okay, this is just for high level.
Mm,
This is only for top management, not for the rank and file and not for the whole organization yet. So
yes.
there are also communication or information that's just for them. Is that okay to keep?
Yeah, I think absolutely. There's definitely like, tiers of information that need to be, honored, right? I
Yeah.
mean, when I say being transparent with the staff, I mean, obviously we're not telling them any, confidential information or any information about high level finances or, very important decisions that they're, don't need to necessarily be privy to right now, right? So I definitely think that there are a lot of levels of communication, but I still do firmly believe that as much as you can be transparent with your employees about what's moving and shaking in the company, you will be better off because they're going to feel like they've looped me in, right? When you work for a company and you're not looped into what's going on, it's pretty hard to have buy-in and a mutually beneficial relationship, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
the fear of the unknown. Like when the people don't know what's going on, that's the
Yeah.
time that they get uneasy and
Yes.
unable to really function effectively and
Yeah.
efficiently. Yeah,
Yeah, productivity goes way down, and they have this running narrative, even
yeah.
on subconscious level in the back of their mind about they don't know what's going on, right? That really bogs down productivity.
Hmm. Oh,
Mhm.
so you've mentioned like the do's in the communication. What about the
Right.
don'ts? What should they not do in
In
types of communication, in the levels of communication?
Yeah. I think, when you're communicating, don't always make it about you, right? I think that's a big thing. I think that when you're communicating, always, seeking to get feedback, right? On that, whatever you delivered in terms of communication, right? So don't make it all about you. Uh, don't not ask for feedback. Um, and I think don't be unclear.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes you get to just give the information like you said, like just a square and then a triangle, so not the whole thing. So
Yeah, yeah, really working
incomplete
on
information is unclear information.
correct, it is, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Let's go to the next ingredient,
Of
which
course.
is recognition.
Mhm. Yeah, I really feel like recognition equals retention, right? When employees feel valued for their work, continues them to be inspired and do more for the company and stay with the company, right? People who feel appreciated will always do more than what is expected of them. And so I talk a lot about two forms of recognition. I mean, there's many forms of recognition, but recognition from a leader and peer-to-peer recognition programs. And so recognition from leaders, it really develops that trust, it builds really great trust and working relationships between an employer and an employee. And
Mhm.
my rule of thumb is to match the reward to the person, match the reward to the achievement, and be timely and specific about it, right? It's really important to make sure that, when you're recognizing employees, that is how they would like to be recognized. So asking recognition questions on your employee engagement survey is really important. Some people
Yeah.
are introverted and they don't want to have a big celebration for them in the communal kitchen about something that they did. They want to be recognized, in private and quietly. And then there's people like me who are quite fine with being, recognized publicly, right? Yeah, so I would say that those are my top keys for the recognition from a leader. And peer-to-peer recognition is extremely important. And in fact, the stats say that peer-to-peer recognition programs are more effective than recognition from your leader. And
Mhm.
that's because recognition from a leader, in a way, is perceived to be expected. Like if you're my manager, I expect you to praise me and tell me I've done a good job when I have, in fact, done a good job.
Yeah.
But it's not really expected to come from a peer, right? And so I think that that's really important to make sure that you establish some peer-to-peer recognition programs, whether you create them or you have your culture ambassadors within your organization create them. I recently read a story where the janitors in the hospital, they created the Golden Broom program. So
Mhm.
every time the janitor saw a colleague that was not on their team, so someone that wasn't a janitor, pick up some garbage or clean something, they gave them a little card with a golden broom on it. And then every time the employees had collected 10 golden brooms, they could turn it in for a small little reward. And I think
Yeah.
that's a super great,
Yes.
like again, something costs very little money, right? Very easy to produce and execute in any business. Obviously, if it doesn't apply to you to have, janitors, you could easily turn that into, colleagues recognizing colleagues for living the company values or
Mhm.
doing something that's above and beyond with their clients, right? And being able to just have a program where they're able to recognize each other. And that really elevates the trust and relationships amongst your team, promotes team spirit, and improves people's confidence and their motivation and their engagement in the workplace.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, so it's important to be recognized because we're humans,
absolutely.
like we're
Yes,
social beings.
we
We
are
want to
social.
be, like
Yes.
when you're being recognized, it's also an affirmation of the things that you have done. Like, okay, yeah, I actually did a good job.
Yeah, it absolutely. It reaffirms that what you have done is the right behavior and we're
Yeah,
rewarding that behavior so you continue to do it and do it
yeah,
more often. And then it also shows the other employees how they can mimic that same
yeah,
behavior and how they too will be rewarded, right?
yeah,
And then I also find a lot that this really helps when, new staff start, right? And they're being onboarded and during that
yeah.
buddy process, right? They'll say, hey, if you do XYZ, if you get 10 little golden brooms, you can turn it in and get, $100 Amazon gift card, right?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
what do you think they're going to do? They're going to immediately start picking up garbage every time they see garbage, right? So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Now let's go to development, the
Yes.
next
Development.
ingredient.
It is, yes. And that is also another big one that we could spend a lot of time talking
Yeah.
about, right? There's so many different areas of development that are really important. I
Hmm.
think the first is that getting rid of traditional performance reviews. Like no one likes giving performance reviews and no one likes being part of them, right?
Yeah.
So, especially the ones that in the traditional manner where your manager sits you down, they give you some sort of Oreo effect of, hey, you've done really well here, but you're not doing so well here, and I want you to do
Sandwich effect.
better.
Yeah.
But you're great, you're doing great, and we're so happy with you. Bye, right?
Mm.
That type of performance review is not effective, right? And I love, getting rid of them and developing performance and development plans that are collaborative with the staff, right? That they're constructive and valuable for them, right? An area and opportunity for you to have organic conversations with your staff about where they have been,
Yeah.
where they are, and where they are going, and how you can help mentor and coach them to get there. And I find that unfortunately, that's where a lot of the traditional performance reviews fall short. Is it's that end part, right? Is that where are you going? How can I help you get there? What
Yeah.
goals can we set? As your manager, your mentoring, your coach, what can I do over the next 6 months to help you do XYZ, right?
Yeah.
Whatever your goal is. So, and
Yeah.
being able to help and coach them around that.
Mhm.
So that's my number one rule around development, right? Is really making sure that you have some firm development plans in place, right, with your staff that have a specific framework that is collaborative and constructive with the staff.
So
Yeah.
that development plan should be thoroughly discussed with the staff, and that person involved should also agree, like, hey, okay, this is where I should improve and
Yes.
how we're going to do about it to be able to reach that plan.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And sometimes it's not even about improvement, right?
Yeah,
It's about, where do you want to go in your career? What can
yeah,
you learn? What can I help you learn in order to, increase your performance, increase your productivity, to take you to the next level of your career? You've had an amazing mentor. I'm sure you've had conversations like that, right? And
definitely. Yeah,
so, yeah, so really kind of trying to bring into that mentorship, right? As a leader, how can I help you get to that next level? As the manager, how can I help you take my job one day, right? And helping set the groundwork and the framework for that now, instead of when it's like, okay, you need to level up, and then it's
yeah,
like you're trying to catch up, right? So,
yes, yeah.
yeah, I
So
think that's really important. Yeah.
yeah. The problem sometimes is that when the leader does not tell you where the problem is.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and again, that's being unclear, right? So that's
Yeah.
going back to that communication portion of it, right? And feeling that you may hurt someone's feelings by
Mhm.
telling them that there's areas of improvement. I think if you go about it in a way where you have, that it's embedded in your values, that we have performance and development plan meetings on a regular basis, and we're constantly talking about where your strengths are and what you're great at and areas of opportunity to improve, and labeling it that, right? Not labeling it as weaknesses or, you know it's just areas of opportunity, right?
Yeah.
To make improvements, and then also allowing them to have an opportunity to discuss with you and collaborate and have an organic conversation about, where they think they are and where they want to be going, right? And if
Yeah.
you're having those on a regular basis, at least every 6 months, then you will see the benefits of having the employees, help with the manager identify their areas of opportunity and formulate a plan on how to work on those, and also set goals to continue improving their performance and their productivity.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Natasha, we've talked about employee engagement surveys, communication, recognition, and development. Now
Yes.
it's time for the HR best practices. What
Practices.
are
Yes.
these HR best practices?
Yeah. You know, and again, we could talk a long time about HR best practices, right? And
Yeah.
it's funny because as the chief culture officer, a lot of times people say, well, aren't you just a human resources manager, right? And I say, no, I'm not. I do not identify as human resources. I think that human resources plays a very important and significant part in the role of any people and culture position within an
Yeah.
organization. But I do think it is a separate entity. And the way that I explain is that, HR managers, they advocate on behalf of the employer to the employee through policies, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But my role of being a chief culture officer is I advocate on behalf of the employees to the employers, right? So my role is to make sure that the employees are well taken care of, they're satisfied, and I am their voice to the leadership team. So it's
Yeah.
just a little bit, again, a little bit of changing that narrative and that thought process a little bit on their access. But human resources is very important, right? And
Yeah.
so there are a lot of best practices that I've seen where, if you're not doing these, they can be really detrimental to your business, unfortunately. And really, they all revolve around hiring the right person for your organization and setting them up for success so
Yeah.
that they have high employee engagement and have the ability to show up again being the best version of themselves, right?
Yeah.
And so I always start with the human resource best practices about looking at it from that angle, right? So how are we conducting our hiring, right? How are we doing our
Mhm.
job postings? How
Yeah.
in our job postings are we speaking to candidates about what employees' wants and needs are, right? So again, going back to thinking about ingredient number one and those employee engagement surveys, right? And you've done surveys and now you're able to identify the people in your industry, the people within your organization, what they want and need from their employment to feel fulfilled and satisfied, have engagement, and have that buy-in to your organization. So
Mhm.
making sure in your job postings that you're speaking to that, right?
Yes.
And then in the interview process, I always like making sure that that's a fun process for everyone, right?
Mhm.
I like embedding a lot of different and unique things, like asking some unique interview questions. I always like asking, if you could be an animal, what would you be and why? Or if you could have a superpower, which one would it be and why?
Mhm.
Uh, and I ask these questions because not only do they get the employees to, think on their feet and think outside the box, but they're really also a great way for you to identify if they would be a fit within your team and
Yeah.
whether or not they would be a fit within your values, right? So sometimes when you ask, specific questions based on values, candidates have been trained very well these days to interview, right? But
Yeah.
when you ask unique questions that they're not necessarily, so that animal question, I will tell you, I did interview someone the other day who told
Yeah.
me, they
Mhm.
told me they would be a sloth.
Oh. Like that's
And I
I
was
don't like
like,
the implication of a sloth. Why would you be a
exactly.
sloth?
So if you're looking to hire a high energy person
Oh,
in sales, in insurance, do you think a sloth is in alignment with the values and what you're
you
looking
say
for?
goodbye now.
Exactly, right? So you can see how
Yeah,
even those fun and unique interview questions are
yeah,
able to attest the candidate's ability, whether they would be a fit within your organization, right? I
yeah,
love the concept for hiring the right person, this right person, right seat, which
yeah.
is talked about in How to Be a Great Boss by Gino Wickman. It
Yeah.
describes the right people are those who share your company's core values and
Yes.
work to create a culture based on those core values. And the right seat is someone working within an organization who is operating in their greatest skill
Yeah.
and passion within an organization. And
Yeah.
so it's really taking the time again to sort of take a step back, look at it from a 10,000-foot view. What
Yeah.
does a great person in our organization look like?
Yeah.
Documenting it, recruiting based off of that, hiring based off of that,
Mhm.
unfortunately, sometimes terminating people based off of that, and then making sure that when they are in their position, that they're in the right seat, that they get it, they want it, and have capacity for it.
Yeah.
It's a really valuable tool, actually. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I would just like to share because I have like a couple of friends, like they were hired for a certain position, and then the position that was put out and was
Mm,
announced, so good and so, shall I say, very attractive, etc. But when they were hired and was actually hired for a certain position, the work was not what they expected.
yes.
So
Yeah.
is there a misalignment? So, and then the ending is that they're not happy. They would want to get out, even if it's
Yes.
just for a month of doing that work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't know if that's really like a misalignment. I think
Yeah.
that unfortunately there is that I've noticed that is happening in some industries these days, is
Yeah.
that people are advertising and saying these are their certain job responsibilities and duties, and they attract a certain type of talent, but when they get there, that's not what they're actually doing. They're
Yes.
doing other things. And I don't want to speak to what some other companies, but I
Mhm.
would like to say that they probably have some, toxic business practices and not a very good workplace culture, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And so I'm not I would never do that, but
Yeah.
I have seen it. I've interviewed people before saying, why are you leaving this company? You just started there a few months ago. And that is a common theme that they say that, I was told that I would be doing this, but I'm not doing this, I'm doing that. Or I
Yeah.
was told if I came on that, I could start as doing just ICBC, and after 3 months, I would be trained to do personal lines. And I think that, unfortunately, maybe some companies are just scrambling so much these days
Yeah.
that they're
Mhm.
just saying whatever they can to get, good
Good
talent in the
talent.
door,
Yeah.
and are hoping by bamboozling them that they'll just stick around. I don't know. It's not a good strategy, and it's not a
Yeah.
good look, and
It,
it's gonna cost you because it's gonna become very
yeah.
reputationally damaging for you. Where because
Correct.
I'm sure your friends leave that company and they go and tell all their friends and all their family, this
Yeah.
don't go work for this company. It's not
Yeah.
great, right? So
And so,
again, clear is kind.
yeah. And that's actually a don't in the HR practice.
That is a
Yeah.
don't in the HR practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the last two topics that I
Yeah.
talk a lot about it onboarding, right? And making sure that
Yeah.
you're setting them up for success
Yeah.
before they even walk in the door, right? It's really
Yeah.
important to make a great first impression with your employees.
Yeah.
And so whatever you can do in order to make sure that they're set up for success before they even start. Maybe that's a handwritten letter from the CEO, right?
Mhm.
Welcoming them to the team, or sending them a little care package with some swag from your company, right? Maybe it's calling them the week before and even talking them through, where the bathrooms are, what equipment do you have in the lunchroom, right? Where can they park, what their first few days are going to look like, what the dress code is like. Starting a new
Right.
job is really, really nerve-wracking, right?
Yeah.
And so whatever you can do to make them feel more comfortable and more set up for success on day one is great, right? And so just making sure you have a really solid onboarding checklist
Yeah.
that is really comprehensive for their first 90 days of employment,
Mhm.
and making sure that they're really set up for
Yeah.
success, like I said. So, yeah.
What's
Yeah.
next after onboarding?
Oh, and then the last one was
Yeah.
unfortunately offboarding. So every once in a while, someone needs to leave your organization, right?
Mhm.
And it's always difficult, but making sure that you're really utilizing it as a learning experience, and
Mhm.
doing exit interviews with anyone who leaves your organization, and
Yeah.
taking that information and learning from it and growing in the future, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe the information or feedback you get is really positive, right? And that's great information to make sure you're taking back to your team, right? So yeah, so just making sure that you have at least some sort of process for that, and there's someone on your team that's either the HR manager, the people or culture person, or just not a direct report, that is actually conducting a thorough exit interview with whoever leaves your company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
about the fun practices?
The fun
The
stuff,
fun
right?
stuff. Yes.
I love the fun stuff, right? And everyone wants to do the fun stuff first.
Of
But I will be
course.
honest with you, I've actually made the ingredients in a very specific linear way. And I've
Mhm,
specifically made the fun stuff last. And
mhm.
that's because you can't have fun if you still have a toxic and unproductive workplace environment, right? I
Yeah.
always like to use the story of Think Google, right? They were the pioneers of having fun at work. They had perks and benefits and all
Yeah.
these, really interesting things, right? They had slides between floors, they had gyms, they had ping pong tables in the lunchroom, they had beer Fridays and bean bags and chill out rooms, et
Mhm.
cetera, et cetera. But Google doesn't have a very good reputation for culture. And that's because they just offered fun and perks and benefits and no other positive workplace culture initiatives, right? And that's why I make the fun stuff last, because you've taken the time to set up a positive workplace culture that's rich in psychological safety. You
Yeah.
have engagement, you have buy in, you have employee engagement surveys, you have effective communication, you have valuable recognition programs, you have development initiatives in place, and you have great human resources best practices, and now you
Yeah.
can have fun, right? Because again, fun doesn't matter if you just have a toxic workplace environment still. It's just putting a band-aid on it, right?
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
and the ideas for having fun at work, again, are endless. We could talk about this for 16
Yeah.
more podcast interviews. So you tell me what you would love to hear about fun at work.
Yes, but the fun at work doesn't have to be expensive. It could just be like, just getting together, maybe have lunch and then talk to each other. That's fun already for us,
Absolutely.
right? Yeah,
Absolutely. You know what? I think there are a ton of ideas that you can implement in your workplace that you
yeah,
don't cost you either anything or
yeah.
something very little at all. Here's a really great example. Coming
Mhm.
up on June 17th is National Recess at Work Day. It's actually on June 16th, but that's a Sunday. So we're going to celebrate it on June 17th, right? It's National Recess at Work Day, right? And
Okay,
so what we do is we have a paper airplane throwing contest. So we
okay.
stop work for 20 minutes and everyone gets a sheet of paper, and in 2 minutes they have to make their best paper airplane,
Yeah,
and then they get to shoot it, and whoever goes the furthest, they get 50 points. And then we have garbage can basketball. So everyone gets 3 pieces of paper and they can crumple it up however they want. And there's different garbage cans at different
yeah,
intervals. You
yeah.
see where I'm going with this? Like, and we
Yes,
just do a bunch of fun little silly
correct.
activities in the
Yeah,
office with everything supplies that we have. And whoever has the most points at the end of recess wins, right? And
yeah,
maybe they get taken to Dairy Queen for a special blizzard or something of
yeah,
their choice, right?
yeah.
Like, or maybe you just buy everyone dilly bars, right? Or we're National Wear Your Pajamas to Work Day. That's on April 16th. So
Oh,
everyone can wear their pajamas to
yeah,
work and have a good time. A lot of this stuff, you're right, it costs, almost nothing, or it just is a great opportunity for your staff to
mhm,
take a break. The stats say that when you take a break from work and
yeah,
do something that is bonding with your team, your productivity when you go back to sit at your desk is actually double, right?
yeah,
So, whereas in your mind, some people think like that old mentality of like stopping work is unproductive to go and have fun, and whether it seems frivolous or silly, right? It's not. It actually was really important to make sure that you're building that productivity
yeah.
afterwards. So,
And you're
yeah.
definitely right, Natasha, when you said like it's important to really have a positive culture in the workplace before you can actually have the fun stuff. Because people, if they're not motivated, if they're demoralized at work, they wouldn't want to get
No,
in the fun stuff. They wouldn't even
no,
want to make a paper airplane. They would just
no.
sulk on their on their
You're
seat,
right.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Some other ideas, I mean, making sure that you're doing a staff appreciation event at least
yeah,
once or twice a year, right? It's a really great
yeah,
opportunity for you to make sure that you're showing your appreciation for your staff. And
yeah,
then a lot of areas and opportunities for you to have fun there, right? There's
yeah,
games you could do, prizes you could do, awards. Awards are a really great way to build rituals and traditions, which are very important when you're building a positive workplace culture.
yeah,
I also love the idea of, doing quarterly challenges or initiatives. We
Yeah.
do these with our staff. It's just a voluntary way for them to participate in something daily or weekly that is not work to do. So we just finished a 12-week step challenge. So
Hmm.
everyone got an app on their phone. It costs $2 a person.
Yeah.
That's pretty economical.
Yeah.
Unless you have a company of 10,000, then maybe not so much. But everyone got an app on their phone and they could track their steps. And for 12 weeks, we competed on a leaderboard to
Hmm.
see who could have the most amount of steps. And what you saw was,
Beautiful.
our staff members
Yeah.
on their lunch break, they were going out and
Yeah.
walking, right? And they were taking the stairs instead of taking the elevator, right? And they were, talking amongst each other and building little team groups where they were going after work and doing little walking clubs, right? And not
Great.
only is that fun, but it also supports health and wellness, right? And
Correct.
healthy employees are happy employees, right?
Yeah.
So really important to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Finally, Natasha, we've been talking about the secret sauce and building a positive workplace or positive culture in the workplace from the point of view of management. What
Mhm.
about from the employees? How
Yes.
can an employee contribute to building a positive culture in the workplace?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really great question. And I'm so glad you asked it. I really think that making sure you understand what those core values are and trying to live them and exhibit them, right? And so,
Yeah.
for us, it's passion, happiness, innovation, and teamwork, right? And so, if you're not sure how that could be exhibited and how you could live those cultures, is asking your leadership team, what can I do? And that should be something that's talked about in those performance and development plans, right? How
Yeah.
do you live our core values, right? How
Yeah.
do I, as the manager, live our core values so you can see them and you can mimic those behaviors, right? So I think as an employee, really making sure that you understand what those core values are and how the leadership team or the managers want to see you living those and exhibiting them. I think becoming a culture ambassador, right? Maybe trying to talk to management about creating a culture club or a social club that you could do
Yeah.
is a really great way for you to also help build a positive workplace culture. I
Yeah.
think giving ideas to your manager, your leadership team, the HR person, the culture person about what you would like to see in terms of either fun at work or any innovative or creative ideas about how we can shape the workplace to be a better place and where we
Yeah.
all show up for 8 hours actually really enjoying being there and
Yeah.
being in each other's company. So I think that's really important. Um, and I also think that, making sure that you are really engaging in those employment engagement surveys, right? Making sure you're filling them out. Encourage your colleagues to fill them out and
Yeah.
providing honest, clear, kind feedback to your managers and being involved, right? Just make
That's
sure if,
true.
if there's social events, get involved in those. If there's a peer-to-peer recognition program, make sure you're filling that out, right? And
Yeah.
invite your colleagues to come and do it as well. So I think that's how employees should get involved as
Yeah.
well. Yeah,
Wow. Thank you so much, Natasha.
of course, it was
Those
my
were like
pleasure.
jam-packed.
Jam-packed.
30
And like I
minutes.
said, in my workshop, we normally talk for each
Amazing. Yes.
ingredient for about 2 hours. So that was just the
Yeah.
Coles Notes versions of it.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yes. So how
Mhm.
can they get in touch with you if they would want to participate in your boot camp and
Yes,
know more how
of
to
course.
cultivate a positive culture in the workplace?
Of course, of course. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Natasha Purnell, or I have a website. It's culturequeennatasha.ca. And so on my LinkedIn and on my website, I have a lot of really great ideas I always post on LinkedIn all the fun stuff that we're doing, any positive workplace culture initiatives that we're doing, because I really like to help inspire, my community, my connections, other business owners or people leaders about what they can do within their organization. And I
Yeah.
get really a great amount of satisfaction when I see people take my ideas and implement it in their business, right? So, so make sure you're following me there and always reach out. I do not feel like my secret sauce needs to actually be secret. And
Yeah.
so I'm more than happy to have any conversation with any leader or small business owner about what they can do to improve the culture within their organization. I'm so passionate about it. I could talk about it for days and hours on end.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Natasha. This has
Thank
been very
you.
interesting, very helpful, and I'm
Oh,
sure
great.
a lot of people will take down notes and try to practice them in their
Absolutely.
workplace.
Yes,
Yeah,
just get started with an
exactly.
employee engagement survey. Do it once a year and go from there. Just get started on it is all you
Yeah,
need to do.
I would advocate that in my own organization.
Yes, amazing. And so
Yes,
you're going to be a culture ambassador and take that information back on Monday morning, right?
glad to
Yeah.
be one.
Yes, great.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much, Natasha. And thank you so much for tuning in to Life Expressions. If you like this episode, make sure to share it with your network. And of course, follow Life Expressions and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm your host, Shari Hinata Elon, and with me is Natasha Purnell. Thank you so much.